Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Krishna Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Om Jnanitimirandasya Ginanjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalang Pangam Langade Kirim Yat Kripaduparaham Vande Shri Guru Dinataranam Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. So, welcome back to our Madurya Kadambini seminar, and today we have the second part, and we will talk about the stage called BHajana Kriya. So we have just had again our overview of the 9 stages. We spoke about Shraddha and Sadhusanga yesterday, and today's focus will, as we mentioned, will be BHajana Kriya, the practice of devotional service, which is followed by Anartha Nivritti, Nishtha, Ruchi, Ashakti, Bhava, and Prema. So the ultimate goal, of course, is to attain Prema, the pure love of Godhead. And as we know, in actually every living entity, in the heart there is love for Krishna. But when the conditioned souls comes in touch with matter, Prabhupada explains, just as milk turns into yogurt when it comes in touch with tamarind, then it becomes yogurt. So similarly, when the original pure love of Godhead, which is already there in the living entity, when we come in touch with the material nature, it turns into lust, the desire to enjoy. And the whole process of sadhana bhakti is to, again, uncover that original love. But it's not so easy and it will take time. That's why we have to go through these different stages. And after one develops some kind of faith in the process of bhakti, in Shastra, and after one associates with the devotees, learns how to associate with the Vaishnavas and accepting shelter of a spiritual master, then one starts the process of BHajana Kriya. And so Vishnava Chakra Thakur explains BHajana Kriya. It says, next comes BHajana Kriya. He begins to practice different types of devotional activities. This also is of 2 types, unsteady and steady. Anishtha and Nishtha. So it's actually interesting. BHajana Kriya, Anartha Nivritti, Nishtha. So BHajana Kriya and Anartha Nivritti, these 2 stages actually go simultaneously in one sense, that while we are engaged in devotional service, then more and more the heart becomes purified and the anarthas are slowly being removed. And once the most anarthas are removed, we attain Nishtha. And from there, devotional service really starts. So in some way, when we speak of BHajana Kriya, it is actually the stage of Anishta BHajana Kriya. It's a platform of unsteady devotional service. And 6 different stages mark the progression of unsteady devotional service. And today we will mainly talk about these 6 symptoms of unsteadiness on that path. So false confidence is the first, then sporadic endeavor, indecision, struggle with the senses, inability to uphold vows, and enjoying the facilities offered by bhakti. These 6 are symptoms of a devotee being unsteady in one's practice. And it's also interesting that when we speak of BHajana Kriya, in some way BHajana Kriya means, in one sense, in a good sense, an imitation of bhajan. Because we perform something that looks like bhajan, but we are actually not capable to actually do real bhajan because the heart is not purified. No. So we do bhajan, we perform devotional service, but it's not actually yet a pure devotional service or devotional service. We are trying, we're just endeavoring, we are engaging. And so there's so many obstacles, and these obstacles, they pull us in different directions. So therefore BHajana Kriya is also, it can be described as a, Hare Krishna, can be described as like an inner battle which takes place in our heart. It's like an inner battle. Because some part of us understands, yes, I want to be a devotee, I want to practice devotional service, but then there's still the other side, inside of us, who has a desire to enjoy and to be independent. So the whole stage of BHajana Kriya is that inner battle. And sometimes we fall prey to this other force, and sometimes we establish ourselves again in devotional service. So that's why Vishnava Chakra Thakur also describes this stage as the stage of instability. Now, we're doing devotional service, yes, we are devotees, we're practicing, but we are very unstable. So each stage of instability is a particular mixture of these two tendencies. The previous tendencies, who like the part in us who still wants to enjoy, and the part of us who knows we want to serve Krishna. Okay, so let's start with the first one. The first one is called Uttamayi. We see the rocket going up and puffed up with enthusiasm. That's a possible way to describe Uttamayi. And Srila Vishnu Chakravarti gives the following example. A Brahman child, having just begun study of the scriptures, thinks he has immediately become a learned scholar worthy of everyone's praise. Similarly, a person just beginning devotional service may have the audacity to think that he has mastered everything. This is called Uttamayi, or filled, puffed up with enthusiasm. And it's in some way quite natural. If we start something new, then we become very enthusiastic about it. Even in material life, I don't know. Someone says, okay, let me do sport or take care of my body, and we become very enthusiastic about, I don't know, yoga or gymnastic or something. So what to speak of spiritual life, we become very enthusiastic. But, and it looks like a young devotee who's very fired up, very enthusiastic. It looks very fixed up. But actually, deeply hidden, there are internal weaknesses. Naturally, it's a young devotee, not yet really established. So there is a lot of weakness actually, but this weakness is covered by enthusiasm. So because he has faith, he wants to be like, I don't know, Dhruva Maharaj or something. He wants to be super enthusiastic and determined. At the same time, he understands there is still many material desires. So one becomes a fanatic from the very beginning, and that's quite rarely avoidable. Like every devotee who in the beginning, in some way, become a bit over-enthusiastic. And I took some notes here from a seminar by His Holiness Bhakti Vigyan Goswami, who speaks very extensively about these different stages, and he says also that these different symptoms of Anishta, Bhajana, Kriya are also symptoms of or signs of immaturity. And the whole process of spiritual life actually is to develop a mature ego in the sense of the ego of a servant. Now we have as a conditioned souls, we have an ego which thinks that I am mine, I'm the enjoyer. But then spiritual life means to more and more develop this identity of I'm a servant of the devotees, a servant of Krishna. And of course, as long we are still in that mood of I'm the enjoyer and the controller, then it's also difficult in interaction with other people. So we have a true belief and enthusiasm, but we have little spiritual experience, and we have little happiness from devotional service. So then we try to compensate with this kind of artificial enthusiasm externally. Yeah, so here we have the Brahmin boy. So the deeper meaning behind this Uttamayi, it's a kind of a battle of pride. We want to be pure devotee, and therefore we are hiding our weakness behind enthusiasm. We have a faith, we want to be a devotee, but in our experience, especially nowadays in the Western modern world, in Kali Yuga, whatever we want, immediately it's there. You want something, you make click, and the next day Amazon will deliver it to you. Everything is instant, everything is very fast. So then we come to spiritual life and we want everything very fast. And we want to have instant enlightenment or instant Krishna Prema. But it doesn't work like that. So that's the first stage, that one becomes over-enthusiastic. And at some point, usually then that enthusiasm also again get lost. And usually the next stage, it's called Gana Tarala, sporadic endeavor. basically Gana and Tarala means thick and thin. No. And what is the meaning? Sometimes we are super enthusiastic or very fixed up, and sometimes we are not. So our practice is very always back and forth. Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur writes, a pupil may be diligently engaged in his studies, and yet at other times, because of inability to understand the subject matter and because of lack of real taste, becomes totally negligent. In the same way, a new devotee sometimes practices the different activities of devotional service attentively and sometimes neglects them. Being sometimes assiduous and at other times negligent, his sporadic endeavor is called Gana Tarala, condensed and diluted. So it's either this way or that way. It's not steady, it's not like fixed, it's always back and forth. And these extremes can be found in all aspects of the beginner's practice. Like example, when we read Shastra, when we read Prabhupada's books, sometimes we can easily understand and we appreciate and we are very enthusiastic, and other times we just don't find any taste in reading, or we fall asleep reading. Or with japa, sometimes we are filled with attention and emotion and we chant, but then other times there's just no taste and we chant very mechanically. Also listening lectures, sometimes our mind is very attentive, we absorb and we feel inspired, and other times we just feel it's a waste of time to be at Bhagavatam class. So there is always these two sides are there. And it's also interesting, in this way, Anishta Bhajana Kriya is sometimes fixed and productive, ghana, and sometimes sin or wavering. And His Holiness Bhaktivedanta Goswami gives an example that because we have not yet actually developed the real taste, in like real spiritual deepness we have not attained, then we are very much dependent on the external. And he gives the example of, okay, that's an ecstatic kirtan here, the early days. But he gives an example of when the first Russian devotees came to Mayapur, and he tells a story how, they were super enthusiastic, like one person kirtan in Mayapur Dham, and then he observed one specific devotee who was, when he was leading kirtan, he was so fired up, very charismatic, singing loud and dancing mad. And then as soon his slot was over and someone else was singing, he was there like completely depressed. Like, as long as I'm in the center of attention and everyone is glorifying me, then I'm enthusiastic. But if I'm not in the center, then, I'm not enthusiastic anymore. And that's an example of, actually having not really developed the taste, but being dependent on the external. As long as others, they kind of tell me, oh, you're such a good book distributor, you're such a wonderful cook. As long as this is there, then I can go on, But if this is missing, then I don't find inspiration. So that's the meaning of this. And here again, the deeper meaning, Gana Tarala, we are dependent on praise by others because we are stuck in mechanical dry practice and therefore have no true satisfaction. So Hare Krishna, welcome. We are talking about different levels of spiritual advancement. When we practice devotional service, then we go through different stages. Yeah. And here, especially today, we talk about symptoms of unsteadiness if we are not yet so determined or not so advanced. And yesterday I mentioned the beauty of this book, the Madurya Kadambini, is that it's very, honestly tells us where we stand, at least for myself. Like it's clear that, I still can see myself in some of these stages here, That means, that Nishta is still far away. Like to be really fixed, it's not so easy. Okay, then the third is Vyuda Vikalpa, indecision, a broad range of possibilities. So a devotee, and these are all signs of unsteadiness because because the devotee is not fixed established in his life, he's always back and forth, and this is kind of a distraction to his spiritual life also. And Srila Vishnu Thakur gives an interesting example. Basically, he mainly speaks about this example. Shall I just be a householder, happy in family life, making my wife and children devotees, and worship the Lord? Or should I give all that up and go and sit in a place of meditation in Vrindavan and become successful by engaging full-time in hearing and chanting with no distractions? And then Vishnu Thakur goes on over several pages and quoting Shastra. So the thing is, the devotee on this stage, it's not that the devotee doesn't understand philosophy, but he doesn't understand how to apply or how what is his personal situation concerns. And of course, most of our devotees, we know that situation. Like as brahmacharis, and it's still the question, white, saffron, white, saffron. This direction. Can I do it for 5 more years, or do I have to change? So it's quite a natural thing. Of course, this is just one example. The question could also be, should I live in a holy dham? Should I go to Mayapur dham, or should I stay in Germany? No, should I do cooking service, or should I go on the street and distribute books? That could also be the doubt. But the thing is that we have some doubts. We're not clear where should we situate ourselves. Like there is not, should I go in this direction or should I go in that direction? And this is also a sign of instability. We are just not yet so clear, what to do, in which direction to go. So we heard Uttamayi is a kind of a battle of pride. We want to be a pure devotee, and then we hide our weaknesses through super enthusiasm. And the last one, Ganatarala, we are dependent on the praise of others because we are stuck in mechanical dry practice. We have not yet found the deeper taste. So the deeper meaning behind here is the battle of avoiding responsibility. Because, either way you go here, there's a lot of responsibility waiting. In either way, it doesn't matter. In every ashram, you have responsibility. Either you become a monk, or you live in an ashram, or you start having a family. There is always responsibility. And often devotees, or conditions all in general, we are afraid to take up responsibility. And because we are not ready to take responsibility, then we are still insecure. Should I do this, that? Like we're kind of trying to find out, where do we have to surrender less? What is the easier way to go? But at the end of the day, we have to anyway surrender, and it means we have to take responsibility in both sides. Okay, and then the fourth is Vishaya Sangara, a battle with the senses. We see a battle there. So there is external battles, but there is also an internal battle. And that's our own battle with the senses. So Vishnu Thakur says, this ongoing battle with his previously acquired desire for sense pleasure, in which he is sometimes victorious and sometimes defeated, is called Vishaya Sangara, or a war with sense pleasure. And it's interesting that this stage comes only now, at the fourth, because in some way, in the very beginning, we also struggle with the senses, but why it is only on the fourth stage? Because usually we are so enthusiastic in the beginning, and the Krishna consciousness is so blissful, that for the first couple of months or years, we're just going on very enthusiastically. And at some point, all of a sudden, our old desires and old habits come back. And then sometimes this becomes more difficult. I remember a long time ago, Sachinanda Maharaj, as a young brahmacha, told me, just wait until you're 40. Then your mind and your senses will want to take revenge. for so long, for 20 years you have suppressed us and controlled us. Now we want to, now is a chance to still enjoy in life. So the senses can become very strong. And so, that's just how it is. That's how life is. The eyes want to see something beautiful. The ears want to hear some nice sound. The hands want to touch something soft. The tongue wants to taste something sweet. So in this way, the senses are always hankering for sense objects to enjoy. And in general, we think that's the way to be happy in this world. But of course, we know Krishna says in Gita, Yehi samsparshata bhoga dukkha yonaye evete adyanta vanta kaunteo nateshu ramate buddhaha. Buddha, that an intelligent person does not find pleasure in this pleasure of sense enjoyment. Because, why? Because it has a beginning and an end. It's not really satisfying. And also the problem is, if the senses are uncontrolled, then we have something like this, this famous picture. We have a very unpleasant journey when the senses go in all different directions. And as we mentioned this morning in the class, actually, that this is a Krishna conscious way to deal with the senses, like a tortoise can withdraw and only uses the senses in spiritual practice, in devotional service, and otherwise withdraws. And it's interesting in this regard when we speak about this battle. First comes this, there's a statement from the Vishnu Purana, it's quite interesting. Vishta Chitanam Vishvan Ashvesha Sutrata Varuni Dik Gatam Vastu Rajan Andrim Kim Apnuyat. For a person absorbed in material enjoyment, absorption in Vishnu is most difficult. A person going east cannot catch an object going west. It's a very simple analogy. If you're going in one direction, east, you can't get something in the west direction. So if someone sincerely wants to practice spiritual life, then some regulation will be required, some regulation of the senses. And of course, we understand that as long as we have a material body, the senses need some enjoyment. It's quite natural. And Srila Prabhupada gives the example of salt. That if a nice dish, let's say a soup, if there is little salt, or no salt, it's tasteless. And if there's too much salt, you can also not taste it. It's too salty. So it just requires the proper amount of salt, and then the soup tastes nice. So similarly, sense gratification, like enjoying through the body, it's natural, it's there, but it should be just the right amount. Otherwise, we get into difficulties. And of course, that right amount may be different for different people also, but there is kind of a Krishna conscious framework that we are working in, like that. And still, this stage actually can be very difficult and challenging for many devotees. And although at the time of initiation we take vows to follow certain principles, sometimes it may take even years till the devotees actually develop the eligibility or the adhikar to follow strictly these rules, because it's just difficult. And Vishnu Chakra Thakur gives a beautiful shloka from the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 20, text 27:8. Having awakened faith in the narration of my glories, being disgusted with all material activities, knowing that all sense gratification leads to misery, but still being unable to renounce all sense enjoyment, my devotee should remain happy and worship me with great faith and conviction. Even though he sometimes engaged in sense enjoyment, my devotee knows that all sense gratification leads to a miserable result, and he sincerely repents such activities. So the devotee knows the goal, and he understands but is maybe not always able to follow. And what is Krishna saying? He should happily continue with devotional service. Like in Christianity, we have sometimes this description from monks in the Middle Age. If they were not able to follow strictly their vows, then they would kind of torture themselves. That's not Krishna consciousness. There's not the no need for that. The process is to just stick to bhakti, to continue devotional service, because actually that devotional service is the only remedy and the only way to get purified and become stronger. Oh yeah, here that's the shloka that we just read. So this is another stage of instability and a difficult one to overcome. And the more we, of course, naturally, the more we absorb in Krishna consciousness, the more we develop higher taste, then it will become more easy to let go the lower taste. And with the higher taste, we can actually overcome this stage and become more fixed. Then the fifth stage of unsteadiness is called niyama akshama, inability to uphold vows. And this is means our own vows, like we want to do some extra. Let's say, okay, from today on, I will every day read 2 hours in Srila Prabhupada's books, or I will chant extra rounds. I will chant every day 25 rounds. So these kind of, we want to do an extra endeavor. We promise ourselves, and we may even tell others, today I've chanted 25 rounds, and I will now always chant 25 rounds. But then we are not able to do that. That's this stage. Vishnava Chakravarti says, the devotee may then resolve, from today I will chant such and such number of rounds of japa, I will pay so many obeisances, and I will render service to the devotees. I will not talk any subject except the Lord, and I will give up all association with people who talk about material matters. Though he makes such resolutions every day, he is always unable to execute them. This is called niyama akshama, or inability to uphold his vows. Vishaya sagara is the inability to give up material activities, whereas niyama akshama is the inability to develop attraction to bhakti. So yeah, we are not. So one is about giving up one thing, and here is about not being able to really get deeper in bhakti. Because we understand, Prabhupada told us chant 16 rounds, minimum 16 rounds. And the idea is that we chant more. But we are not really able to do so, because we are not so steady. I remember once in Vrindavan, I visited Mukunda Datta. You know Mukunda Datta, the Swiss devotee, who has been living in Vrindavan Dham for many, many years, and he's the head priest in this Krishna Balaram Mandir. So I had an appointment with him at, 6 o'clock in the evening, so I came, and he was sitting there in his Bhajan Kutir, altar, and sitting and chanting japa. And I came, and obeisances, and we sat down, and he was continuing chanting, and then I kind of stupidly said, "Oh, Prabhu, you have not finished your rounds yet." So like my stupid, my conditioned stage of I chant 16 rounds, and when 16 rounds is over, then the beatback goes there, and I don't touch it anymore. And if someone at 6 o'clock in the evening still chants, it means he has not finished the rounds. And we have an appointment. Why is he not talking to me? And he's still chanting. Maybe I should go. Maybe that kind of thought. And then he was just smiling, chanting. Prabhupada wanted us to chant more in 16 rounds. Hare Krishna. Yeah, sure. Sure, yes. The idea is that we increase our devotional service, but then we are not able to do so because we are not steady enough. We're still struggling with so many things. So we like to be like Haridas Thakur, but we are not yet on that level. And what is the deeper inner kind of pride or hidden agenda that is there? This stage is a hidden rivalry. We want to show that we are better than everyone else. Why do we make unrealistic vows? Because we want to show to the world how advanced we are. This can be a hidden, agenda here. Of course, it's good to do extra, but if you're not able to do it, then sometimes this can be a reason. And little humor, I found this funny picture here. Let your trump chakra flow. I meditate extremely well. Nobody meditates better than I do. I have great relationship with some gurus, but I'm actually the most spiritual person around. I guarantee it. So that's like the ego always wants to be the best. We always want to be the best. And then we come to spiritual life, and then we also want to be the best meditator. Nobody looks so peaceful like I do. We want to be the best devotee. So that mentality of wanting to be the best sometimes is even brought into spiritual life. I like that. Let your trump chakra flow. Okay, and then the last of these 6 unsteady signs of unsteadiness is a very interesting one. It's Taranga Rangini, enjoying the facility offered by bhakti, or enjoying like the waves. That's why we have a wave there. Vishnava Chakravarti Thakur says, bhakti produces such opportunity for material gain, worship, and position. These are weeds around the creeper of bhakti. Engaging oneself in pleasure-seeking, ranga, amidst these weed-like facilities, which are but small waves, taranga, in the ocean of bhakti, is called taranga rangini, delighting in material opportunities. So bhakti, or the happiness that bhakti can give us, is compared to an ocean. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is like, there is so much transcendental spiritual happiness that we can find in devotional service. But then sometimes there are little waves on that ocean, and we think, let me enjoy these little waves. And these little waves are the opportunity that bhakti gives us. Because if someone has practiced devotional service for a little time, then has attained some stability. This is like we have overcome all the other unsteady stages, so we become a little steady, and all of a sudden a devotee becomes attractive, a devotee becomes charismatic, and people feel attracted to the devotee and praise him. Oh, you're such a nice preacher, you're such a nice devotee. And then it's easy to try to exchange this attractiveness to some subtle enjoyment, like appreciation, praise by others. And like it's easy especially also in our Hare Krishna movement. Then you're a senior devotee, you're a priest, you're doing abhishek. That's a way you could fall trap of thinking that I'm something special, or I'm a great kirtani. I'm not saying specifically that this person thinks like that. Just have chosen some picture. But these are different traps you can fall in. Like you become very expert musician, and then you start to enjoy the facilities that you got by this expertise. And it came from bhakti. Before you maybe didn't know how to play a drum, but now you play very well. So through bhakti you have developed this expertise, and now you enjoy, or someone praises you as a very good cook. Although he looks quite humble actually. But people can become proud because everyone glorifies them for their cooking, or become a very good speaker and become a social media influencer. It's very, very dangerous business actually. So this is the Taranga Rangini, enjoyment on the waves, that the highest stage of instability. This is the most subtle battle which is there in the heart between the desire to serve Krishna and the desire to enjoy. So basically all this instability, these stages of instability, were always has to do with that inner battle, that do I want to actually please Krishna, or do I want to please myself? And this is like the most subtle aspect of it. Because externally we're already quite nicely established now. We are more stable than before. But now we start to try to enjoy these facilities. Okay, that's the overview. Bhajana Kriya, the practice of different devotional items, is of two kinds: unsteady, anishta, and steady, nishta. Unsteady devotional practice, anishta bhajana kriya, is characterized by 6 mentalities experienced in stages. So these were the 6 stages that we discussed today. So yeah, I personally, as I mentioned, I found it quite sobering in some way to hear, but it's also good to learn and understand that, yeah, every devotee goes through these stages more or less in different degrees, in different ways. But as long these things are there, it will be very difficult to be fixed in devotional service because we're always kind of distracted by these desires. And next will follow is anartha nivritti. This is just basically a description of how these unwanted things in the heart will be removed one by one in different ways, and there's different categories of anarthas that will be removed. It's a bit technical session, but that description is there. And once then the anarthas are removed, at least to a large extent, then nishta comes. And nishta is that what we are all striving for. Nishta is that stage where spiritual life becomes more easy. We still hope that that day will come, that we attain that platform where we become more fixed and really determined to actually really want to serve Krishna, and our own motivation and desires finally go more in the background. Okay, thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Do we have any comments or questions on what we heard?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I had one which I think is quite not so important. It's one a little bit. Once it's okay. Let me start with the half important. About breaking the vow, unfulfilled commitment to spiritual weaknesses. I was thinking, is it savior to then not take vows? Just be sure we will not break them,
yeah.
Or can we take vow but maybe we don't tell anyone? Sometimes people tell everyone so that it will help them. Oh, now I have told everyone, so I
so like that, yeah.
So what is the best way of action?
It's I think my personal opinion is that in ISKCON we don't talk so much about these things, and we should talk more about it. Because externally we say 4 regulated principles, this is like our standard, all the members follow this. But if you look closer, actually many members don't follow that because it's just difficult, And it's also quite natural. I mean, if you have 2 young people getting married and you expect them to live like, I don't know, sannyasis, how does that work? It's not so easy. And it's also a process. It's not like then you are on a perfect, it's a process you have to learn. So somehow there is I think there needs to be more communication about this topic. On the other hand, I was just teaching the ISKCON Disciple course the other day, and there is also a session about following the regulated principles. And there is heavy statements by Srila Prabhupada, very, very strong statements by Prabhupada, very clear. And Prabhupada says, actually to follow the 4 regulated principles, which means to no eat meeting, no gambling, no intoxication, no illicit sex. Illicit sex, of course, that's also how to define that. On the highest level, it's just for procreating children, or on another level, it's just within the marriage. But outside of the marriage, it's illicit. So someone who takes vows and becomes an initiated member, he follows these principles. So Prabhupada says, it's not very difficult to follow these principles. It's very easy, Prabhupada says. It's very easy. It's not so difficult. And then Prabhupada says, my disciples have to follow this principle, whether in heaven or in hell, they have to follow. Because, if you promise and then afterwards you don't follow, what is this? No, that's the difference between human and animal. Animal means just acting according to instinct. And human can take discrimination, can take vows and promise. So that's why we have to follow, Prabhupada says. Whether in heaven or hell, we have to follow. And Prabhupada says, if those who are not able to follow, they cannot call themselves my disciples. very like very strong. And of course, then the second part of the section is we have some brainstorming and discussing with each other. Okay, what can be challenges and how can we overcome them, and try to give support. But from that point of view, it would seem that it's a better advice to, if one is not able to follow the vows, then better not take the vows. Better wait and be really clear the time of initiation. That's one approach. And another approach is that, I will try my best, and if I'm not able to do it, then as we heard from this Bhagavatam shloka, that even if you're not able to follow the vows, of course it's not an excuse. We know that this is not the idea, but then we continue with bhakti. And and of course in regards to how to understand, then I think some spiritual masters are more open to talk about this, and they also talk openly to the disciples what they expect them to follow, and others are maybe not so open to talk about this. And so it's quite a big subject matter. There are some senior devotees who kind of feel that it should be clearly defined in a more liberal way, and then GPC recently just kind of stick to the traditional understanding. But there are some leaders who feel that it should be newly defined according to Prabhupada's statements, but just make it a bit more clear or understandable. Yeah, that's what I could say. You had a second question?
I had a reflection. Maybe
or maybe.
You just see if someone else has something.
Yeah. Yes, please.
For me, is this the scientist? And I don't. When I hear this and this is this and you have to do this and this, and I think, how should I manage this? I'm so simple devoted. I don't know how to do anything.
I listened to a seminar by Romapad Swami, gave a series of lecture on this same topic. I listened in the preparation. And he addresses this point. He says, if you hear all these stages and all these technical terms and this Sanskrit word and that, and he says, you don't need to know all of these to go back to Godhead. So no worry. It's not needed to know all these technical terms. But it is there for us. It's there to help us, to help us. Like if you want to be very introspective with yourself, you can try to analyze yourself, where I'm standing, and then this kind of description helps you to, I think I'm standing here. It can be some guidelines, some help, but it's not necessarily required that we understand everything completely perfect. Because at the end of the day, Radha Madan Mohan wants to see our devotion. And if we have that devotion, develop that devotion, then we are on a good.
When I have some of this anarthas and so on, I don't can deal with this. How can I get rid of them when I cannot go back?
I mean, this brings us into another discussion of how much this anartha nivritti, or getting rid of the anarthas, how much it is something that we need to consciously work on, or how much it is just automatically happening while we do the process. And that's also some controversy, different opinions on how much we actually need to personally be involved in introspection, and how much is just the natural power of bhakti that just purifies the heart. I guess both needs to be there. I mean, we certainly require introspection and have to work on ourselves. At the same time, the process of devotional service is extremely powerful. And if we actually take shelter in the holy name, our heart will be purified, and there things will be revealed. And I think part 2 is going on. Should we stop here?
Just thought of.
Yeah, please. You wanted to share a reflection? Yeah.
How much it's subtle. All those things are very subtle.
Subtle, yeah.
Very much actually connected to our motivation. What do we want
yes.
out of it?
Yes.
There also could come the question how much introspection is of importance
If
of the
in
spiritual
that,
journey,
yes.
or okay, just keep and one
Yeah.
day it will be gone.
Yeah, right. It's all about how much do I have actually, and that's why Prabhupada often made that point. It all depends on the sincerity of the attitude of the student. It's so much depending on that. In the introduction of Nectar, Upadeshamrita Prabhupada writes that the attitude of the student is essential in bhakti, because according to our motivation, that really makes a difference in all the activities that we do. Yeah. I mean, I'm a person who I think this introspection is very, very crucial and important. Most probably in the traditional setting, when you live very close with Guru, then in that sadhu sangha, it just becomes very obvious. I mean, you have experience. You served for so many years closely to your Guru Maharaj. I'm sure in that close sadhu sangha, so many things just comes up and will be revealed. But sometimes now in the present situation where many devotees don't have such close association with their Guru, and maybe they require some other Sangha also association, but that association certainly is very helpful too. We need that mirror. That's why also relationship, usually Grihasthashram is very good for most, because in that relationship there is always a mirror. And then things come up. But it is important. And at the same time, there's the bhakti process, which is super powerful, and Krishna is also super merciful. But yeah, that motivation, that sincerity needs to be there. Okay, I think we could say more, but then we would stop here. Thank you very much for your participation. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Kripa Sindhu Bhebhya Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo.
Just for everyone, tomorrow afternoon will be no session, in case you want to follow, but the session of tomorrow evening